Welcome to the session on fractions, addition and subtraction. The objectives for this session are learning how to add and subtract 2 or 3 fractions with different denominators, and verify the commutative and associative properties of addition for fractions with the same denominators. Let's first look at the terminology. We will look at what the numerator and denominator of a fraction are. If we have a fraction 3 out of 8, this fraction represents, for example, 3 pieces of a circular pie which is cut up into 8 pieces. The value on the top part of the fraction is known as the numerator, and the value on the bottom part of the fraction is known as the denominator. In our example, the numerator is 3 and the denominator is 8. Having understood the terminology, let's consider 2 fractions with different denominators. Let's look at an example first. Suppose that we have 2 pies which are both cut up into pieces. One pie is cut up into 2 equal pieces, and the other pie is cut into 4 equal pieces. This piece is 1 out of 2, or 1 over 2. And this piece is 1 out of 4, or 1 over 4. Clearly, the 2 pieces are different sizes, so it is not straightforward adding 1/2 to 1/4. However, if we cut the piece on the left into 2, as shown, we can see that this is equivalent to 2 pieces out of 4. Now we can easily add the pieces on the right to the pieces on the left. So 2 pieces out of 4 plus 1 piece out of 4 equals 3 pieces out of 4. How would we solve 1 out of 2 plus 1 out of 4 without diagrams? First, convert the fractions so the denominators are the same. Here, we only need to consider 1 out of 2, as this can easily be converted to have the same denominator as 1/4. Multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number 2 to give 2 out of 4. Therefore, 1/2 plus 1/4 equals 2/4 plus 1/4, as shown. Finally, add the numerators to give 3 and leave the denominators alone to give 4. Now let's add 2 slightly more complicated fractions. First, convert the fractions so the denominators are the same. The denominators are 2 and 3. The lowest common multiple, or LCM, of 2 and 3 is 6. If you cannot remember how to find the LCM, please revisit the unit on HCF and LCM. Multiply the numerator and denominator of 1/2 by the same number 3 to give 1/2 equals 3 out of 6. And multiply the numerator and denominator of 1/3 by the same number 2 to give 1/3 equals 2 out of 6. Finally, add the numerators to give 5 and leave the denominators alone to give 6. Now let's subtract these fractions from each other. First, convert the fractions so the denominators are the same as we did previously. The denominators are 2 and 3, so the lowest common multiple of 2 and 3 is 6. Multiply the numerator and denominator of a half by the same number 3 to give a half equals 3/6, and multiply the numerator and denominator of a third by the same number 2 to give a third equals 2/6. Finally, subtract the numerators to give 1 and leave the denominators alone to give 6. Now let's add two different fractions. Again, convert the fractions so the denominators are the same. The denominators are 5 and 9, and the lowest common multiple, or LCM, of 5 and 9 is 45. Multiply the numerator and denominator of 4 out of 5 by the same number 9 to give 4/5, which is equal to 36 out of 45. And multiply the numerator and denominator of 1 out of 9 by the same number 5 to give 1/9 equals 5 out of 45. Finally, add the numerators to give 41 and leave the denominators alone to give 45. Now let's subtract two fractions from each other. As before, convert the fractions so the denominators are the same. The denominators are 11 and 22, and the common multiple, or the lowest common multiple, of 11 and 22 is 22. Multiply the numerator and denominator of 7 out of 11 by the same number 2 to give 14 out of 22. We can leave the fraction 3 out of 22 as it is because the denominator is already 22. Now subtract the numerators to give 11 and leave the denominators alone to give 22. Notice that the numerator and denominator have a common factor 11, so divide both the numerator and denominator by 11 to give a half. Now let's add three fractions to each other. As before, convert the fractions so the denominators are the same. The denominators are 2, 3 and 4. The lowest common multiple, or LCM, of 2, 3 and 4 is 12. So the denominator of each fraction must be 12. Multiply the numerator and denominator of a half by the same number 6 to give a half equals 6 out of 12. Similarly, multiply the numerator and denominator of 2/3 by the same number 4 to give 2/3 equals 8 out of 12. And multiply the numerator and denominator of a quarter by the same number 3 to give a quarter equals 3 out of 12. Now add the numerators to give 17 and leave the denominators alone to give 12. 17 out of 12 represents 17 pieces out of 12, so another way of expressing this is to say that we have 1 whole and 5 pieces out of 12, as shown. Now let's simplify this expression. As before, convert the fractions so the denominators are the same. The denominators are 2, 5 and 4. The LCM of 2, 5 and 4 is 20, so the denominator of each fraction must be 20. Multiply the numerator and denominator of a half by the same number 10 to give a half equals 10 out of 20. Similarly, multiply the numerator and denominator of 2/5 by the same number 4 to give 2/5 equals 8 out of 20. And finally, multiply the numerator and denominator of a quarter by the same number 5 to give a quarter equals 5 out of 20. Now add and subtract the numerators as shown to give 7, and leave the denominators alone to give 20. We will now verify the commutative property of the addition of fractions. Consider the example shown. First simplify the left-hand side. Add the numerators and leave the denominator as it is. This gives 3 out of 5. Now simplify the right-hand side. Add the numerators and leave the denominator as it is. This also gives 3 out of 5, and therefore the left-hand side equals the right-hand side. We will now verify the associative property of the addition of fractions. Consider the example shown. First simplify the left-hand side. Add the fractions in brackets first. Add the numerators and leave the denominator as it is. We can do this as, of course, the denominators of both fractions are the same. So now we have 3/5 plus 4/5. And adding these two gives us 7/5 or 1 and 2/5. And now for the right-hand side. Add the fractions in brackets first. Again, we add the numerators and leave the denominator as it is. We can do this again as the denominators of both fractions are the same, giving us 1/5 plus 6/5. Again, add the numerators and leave the denominators to give 7/5 or 1 and 2/5. And so the associative property has been verified for this example. This brings us to the end of this session. If you have understood its contents, you should be able to add and subtract 2 or 3 fractions with different denominators, and verify the commutative and associative properties of addition for fractions with the same denominators. Thank you very much for listening. Now pause the slideshow and have a go at these exercises. The solutions will be released one at a time, so you can check your answers as you go along. Pause the slideshow when you need to. Now pause the slideshow and have a go at these exercises. The solutions will be released one at a time, so you can check your answers as you go along. Pause the slideshow whenever you need to. Now have a go at exercise 3. The solutions will be released one at a time, so you can check your answers as you go along. Pause the slideshow whenever you need to. And now for exercise 4, do have a go. The solutions again will be released one at a time, so you can check your answers as you go along. Pause the slideshow whenever you need to. And finally exercise 5.